Yes, I can.
All right, everyone, I have 5:30 prepared to start the meeting. Okay. I call to order the regular board meeting for Toledo Public Schools, Tuesday, September 22nd, 2020. Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Gerken,
Here.
Mrs. Varwig,
Here.
Mr. Vasquez,
Here.
Miss Barnes,
Present.
Mrs. Eichenberg.
Here.
Is the flag up now, Mr. Vasquez?
Yes.
We're ready for the Pledge of Allegiance then.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You back to the scoreboard?
Yes, thank you. Dr. Durant?
At this time, we would like to begin tonight's meeting with a moment of silence to remember 3 TPS students: Tyler Jackson, Narion Green, Braylon Noble, and one of our own staff members, Mr. Richard Rucher, who was the assistant treasurer to the treasurer. Our thoughts and prayers go out to these families and during this time of difficulty. May we please take a moment of silence to remember our loss.
Thank you, everybody. Dr. Durant, to the mission and vision.
Toledo Public Schools' mission is to produce competitive college and career-ready graduates through a rigorous curriculum across all grade levels by implementing Ohio New Learning Standard with fidelity. Our vision statement is to strive to be an A-rated school district whose graduates are college and career ready. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Durant, and it's still over to you for presentations.
Yes, we will turn presentation portion over to Ms. Patty Mazur, please.
Good evening, everyone. 2 quick bits of good news that I would like to share. First, Toledo Public Schools was one of only 40 Ohio employers honored earlier this month by the Department of Defense for the district's extraordinary support of employees who are enlisted in the National Guard or who serve in the reserves. This was brought forward by our own Sean Mitchell, the district's submission for this award and his work in the reserves. And you might remember last year, Mr. John Krajewski was honored with recognition for his support of Mr. Mitchell as he was deployed. So we do expect a plaque commemorating this honor to be sent to the district in the next few weeks. And then more good news. Rosa Parks Elementary School received an $8,000 donation from AFSCME, and that donation will be used to cover supplies for special projects that teachers may want to do this year. Rosa Parks was chosen as one of just a few schools in the Northwest Ohio market to be part of the AFSCME Roundup for Education program, and that is something that the organization does every year in support of local schools. And then we have 2 retirements to celebrate. Ms. Darla Perry, she paraprofessional, and she is retiring with 31 years and 4 months of service to the district. And Mr. Robert J. Webb III, a 5th grade teacher at Glendale Fieldbach. He is retiring with 30 years and 4 months of service, totaling for the 2 of them 61 years and 8 months. and we wish them both the best.
Thank you very much. That is good news. The next section is section 3, and at this time we have no community comments. So we'll go right on to organizational input and call on Ms. Kelly McConaughey from Parent Congress.
Mr. Vasquez, looking at the attendee list, the only individual here for organizational input is Mr. Ramirez.
Okay, then let's go directly to Mr. Ramirez. Thank you, Mr. Steckschulte.
Thank you both. First, I think it's a somber that we have to start a meeting with a moment of silence, but I do appreciate taking the time to recognize our families, whether it's our student families, community families, or our employees' families, on that effect of the loss of all those folks. So thank you for that. Just wanted to say about our March to Yellow. Seems like a very hard, long, treacherous march to yellow. As we go through this, I always think that we always seem to pull it together, but this one seems going to be a little bit harder. So I want to be there and support and help everybody get through this and do the best thing we can do for our community and for our students and our families. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Ramirez. Section 5 is comments by the board. Are there any board members that want to make comments at this time?
Yes, I would like to thank TAAP for inviting me to speak as they announced their new seats for this year. So I did appreciate that, and I'm looking forward to them partnering with TPS to meet their mission.
Thank you. Any other board members? Okay.
You're muted, Bob.
Thank you, Ms. Gherkin. Appreciate it. Go on to section 6, which is the consent agenda. And that would be agenda items 6 through 01 and through 6.23. And board members may request to pull an item from the consent agenda and move it to the discussion section of the agenda if they wish. So item 6.01 to 6.03 is the Human Resources, Staff Development and Training Committee. And the chair is Polly Taylor Gherkin, and the co-chair is Stephanie Eichenberg. Item 6.04 through 6.07 is the Finance and Business Operational Committee, and the chair is Bob Vasquez, co-chair Stephanie Eichenberg. Item 6.08 and 6.09 is the Community and Public Relations Committee, and the chair is Stephanie Eichenberg and co-chair Chris Varwig. 6.10 to 6.11 is the Board Curriculum Instruction and Academic Excellence Committee, and the chair is Polly Taylor Gherkin, and the co-chair is Chris Varwig. Item 6.12 through 6.18 is the Policy Committee. The chair is Sheena Barnes, co-chair Bob Vasquez. Item 6.19 and 6.20 is the Athletics and Student Activities Committee, and the chair is Chris Varwig, and the co-chair is Stephanie Eichenberg. Item 6.21 is the Family and Community Engagement Committee. There are no action items this month. The chair is Bob Vasquez, and the co-chair is Chris Varwig. Item 6.22 and 6.23 is the approval of the board meeting minutes. I request a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved, Varwig. Bob, I would like to pull something out because I don't think we actually came to a conclusion in policy.
Okay, what is it that you want to pull out?
The 6.17.
Okay, is that, you just want to pull it out of the consent agenda, or do you want to move it to discussion?
I would like to further have the board look at that before we approve it or make a vote on that.
So do you want to go back to committee?
Yes, please.
Okay. Mr. Sexualty, can you take a note of that?
Yes, I have taken it out of the consent agenda, and we'll bring that back to committee.
Okay. Since we didn't vote on it, can we then have a motion to vote on the revised consent agenda?
So moved, Varwig.
Second, Barnes.
Thank you. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Treasurer, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Gerken, Mrs. Gerken,
Yes.
Mrs. Barwig,
Yes.
Mr. Vasquez,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Mrs. Eichenberg.
Yes.
Thank you. That takes us to section 7 of the agenda, which consists of reports and minutes from this month's committee meetings and are here for information reference. There's no action required, so we can proceed to section 8 of the agenda. Section 8 are the discussion items. We have one discussion item, which is 8.01, and that is the non-certified section. Can I have a motion to approve that section?
Eichenberg.
Second, Gherkin.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none, Treasurer, you please call the roll.
Mrs. Gerken,
Yes.
Mrs. Barwig,
Abstain.
Mr. Vasquez,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Mrs. Eichenberg.
Yes.
Thank you. That takes us to section 9 for walk-ins. Do we have any walk-ins today, Mr. Sexualty?
No, we do not.
All right, thank you. Section 10 is the early childhood education action items. And for that, I will turn it over to Chair Polly Taylor Gerken.
We just have 2 action items. I believe they will require separate votes. One is for the Head Start grant that I would love to hear from Dr. Allen just briefly about how this allows us to further expand our early childhood offerings. So a very competitive grant. Are you on, Dr. Allen?
I am. So this is a new Head Start opportunity. It is about a $4 million opportunity for us to expand our Head Start programming in the district. It's a highly competitive application. It is available to 15 different states, and a total of 30 awards will be given. So we submitted yesterday, actually, and we will submit board approval forthcoming, and then we'll wait until spring to find out whether or not we've been awarded.
So I'll need a motion for each of those items separately.
So is the motion one for the Head Start application and on the agenda, and the other one for the COLA?
Correct.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, so they have to be, can I have a motion for the Head Start application?
So moved, Varwig.
Seconded, Barnes.
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, Treasurer, please call the roll.
Mrs. Gerken,
Yes.
Mrs. Barwig,
Yes.
Mr. Vasquez,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Mrs. Eichenberg.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, next we need a motion on 10.02, which is the COLA and QI contract amendments. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved, Eichenberg.
Is there a second?
Second, Varwig.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? You know, the only thing I want to say is that, you know, regularly and routinely, this committee, Early Childhood and the Head Start Committee, you all do a lot of work. You really do a lot of work. Dr. Allen, I want to thank you. This committee really requires and has a lot of requirements, which are good requirements, and a lot of engagement from a lot of different people. And I just want to thank you for all the work that you do. And I think that when we go through the consent agenda, all of our committees do all of our work. We do our work through committees. And so we go through the regular board meeting agenda fairly quickly, but I want to point out that there's a lot of work in the background. And what reminded me specifically is this committee always has a lot of work to do. So I want to thank especially Dr. Allen, Pilot Taylor Gherkin, and Sheena Barnes for all the work that you do. If there's no other discussion, Treasurer, will you please call the roll?
Mrs. Gherkin,
Yes.
Mrs. Varwig,
Yes.
Mr. Vasquez,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Mrs. Eichenberg.
Yes.
Okay, that takes us to section 11, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and section 11 of the agenda consists of early childhood education reports and minutes from this month's committee meetings and are provided here for the information and reference. There's no action is required. We can proceed to section 12, which is the early childhood education walk-ins. Are there any walk-ins this evening? I can see
No walk-ins.
No.
there are no walk-ins. Okay, thank you for that. That takes us to section 13, which through 15, which 13 is comments by the superintendent.
Yes, just want to touch back and point Mr. Ramirez had spoken to about our announcement last week. Just a reminder to the community is that March Back to Yellow, we're doing just that. Understand that the yellow is the hybrid model, which means your child is either in an A group or B group. A group is Monday and Thursday, B group is Tuesday and Friday, and Wednesday is intervention days, particularly those who need double up on intervention. Food will be provided for the days that's not in attendance, as well as over the weekend, working with our partners with connecting kids to meals. So that appreciation is there. Again, a reminder of the start date, Monday, October 12th, pre-K to second grade, those students will return in the hybrid model. Again, our youngest and earliest, most at-risk will be first, and they will get used to the new way of education, particularly walking the halls, in your classroom, the distancing that's in the classroom. So the classrooms are going to be pretty much split in half, meaning if there's 20 students on an enrollment list, 10 will be on any given day. And so again, just things will be new, but again, getting those earlier age crossed and getting them into the routine. And then on Monday, October 26th, our third grade through 12th grade, these students will return back to school just as well. And we will have the entire district back at that particular time. Again, a new way of order and how schools will operate. We just need to get kids used to it. And so we're staggering them in just as you see before us. And older ones tend to do a little bit better on the remote learning. Again, I tell the parents, any and the most factual information you can get is always on tps.org or our social media page. I would ask to steer away from rumors. I would always ask you to ask and check through the district in the event that you need information. And my email is always available when provided. I always respond to. And then to wrap it up in regard to the March Back to Yellow, again, obviously hand washing, sanitizing, all those things are going to go through the guidelines with our own internal expert. I like to call her our Dr. Fossey, which is Ann Cipriani, who is our expert in the health and field and works closely with our CDCs. She does a phenomenal job. We are excited to have her. Remember that we have full-time nurses at every building, as well as we have health centers in our high schools, which we are working to get one at each and every high school. But our teledoctor is going to be launched through a grant through each of our elementaries. That's to come. But again, we're going to continue to provide wraparound services to our students, whether we're in remote, hybrid, or all inclusive fully. And then obviously the last is the Big Ten is back, and so is the City League. City League play is back. Kids are conditioning. They're getting out and ready. Just as they would do in the summertime. We just had a little bit of a postponement so we could study and see what's best practice. We're excited to see the best practice, and now we're able to roll right into our seasonal play. Starting October 1st and onward, you will see seasonal play, whether it's cross country, tennis, football, all the things that happen in fall sports will continue on, and us ability to have interleague play will allow us to do so, and we will end all with a championship just as well. So all is continuing to move forward, continue to be safe. I know we've echoed it each and every board meeting, is that at the end of the day, these things can only happen through your safety as well as through your responsibility of taking into your own home, as well as how you go about the community work. Masks is always a must, and we continue to ask and encourage that, but those who come into the schools, staff and students, will be required to wear masks just as well as hand sanitizer that will be provided. So again, we're excited to get students back in. I've been seeing them out and about, and I've seen some on the screens, and I could tell how anxious they are. So I appreciate the board partnering with the district and making this happen, having an inclusive plan. And we got more things to do with the state. So I look forward with the board, continue the partnership and do some things around report card and other things as we move forward. So again, thank you.
Dr. Durant, thank you very much. That was pretty thorough, and we really appreciate all the information that you're always on top of and giving out to the community. Mr. Steck-Schulte, the treasurer, do you have any comments?
Yes. Late last week, we received notification that the lawsuit that Toledo, Cleveland, and Dayton brought against the Ohio Department of Education, that we were at this point victorious. And I say at this point because they still have time to appeal if they would so choose. So far, they reduced our award from the $13 million that we were requesting down to a little over $4 million, which is still a win in our books. This lawsuit was brought about due to the way that the Ohio Department of Education changed the way that they counted community school students back in 2005. And then that affected our funding for 2005 and then 2006 and 2007. So this lawsuit goes back that far, and the way that they counted the students, and the courts found that the ODE did not have that right to do it the way they did it. So we'll be waiting to see what will happen with it if they will appeal.
I just want to thank Mr. Steck-Schulte, the Treasury Department, as well as the Board of Education, who have all come together to put this lawsuit forward. This is board members, elected officials, and district representatives fighting for taxpayers and making sure that their dollars are being expended, as well at the same time being brought into the district as should be. And so it's appreciative to see, you know, in pre-K, we're going after grant dollars. At the same time, when dollars are not appropriated and should be, you can rest assured that the board is the first to always say, what are our options? And this is just a win in essence, and continue to move forward. So again, thank you.
Dr. Durant, I want to add to that because I remember back in 2008, 2009, we had extensive discussions on behalf of the board about whether this was a prudent legal action to join into. And I also want to thank our legal counsel, Amy Nanashak, and her colleagues, because we tossed this around. And I think that you're right, Dr. Durant. We want to be good stewards of the community's money and the taxpayers' money, and you never know whether it's prudent to take on such a lengthy, complicated lawsuit. But you know, we were kind of challenged at the time that people expected we were not going to challenge the action of the state, and we decided to. And I think this is a good outcome. And it shows that sometimes you have to make those decisions and fight for the community taxpayer. So we will continue to do that as a board. But it involved very extensive conversations.
Those were the only comments this evening.
All right, thank you, Mr. Steck-Schulte. Board member comments. Other comments from the board? I see Stephanie Eichenberg with her hand up.
I just wanted to do a quick rundown, not to make a short meeting long. So I do want to thank the staff at Toledo Early College and Ms. Force for taking some of us on a tour last week, and just kind of reiterate that even though we've spent the year so far sort of feeling like we're running in place, we are making forward progress as a district in doing important new things like housing our Toledo Early College students in a building that was appropriate for their program. So it was really great to see, and I appreciated that tour. I did also want to acknowledge the Head Start team and the early childhood education team. Head Start grants they aren't fluffy by any means. They take a lot of data and they take a lot of work. And so I think that's pretty neat that even though we know it's highly competitive, we're willing to put in the work to throw our hat in the ring and do a good job to see, can we be one of those grantees? And I hope we are. So I really appreciate that work. I also just wanted to acknowledge, I think this is the first full board meeting since everybody has been back. And I know it's been exhausting. And I want to thank everybody for their extra efforts, for the, all the educators who are finding new ways to teach, even if they never wanted to teach that way. And, the bus drivers who are helping transport food in teams of adults instead of students. Nobody thought we would work like this. And yet we're doing it. And mostly I would say successfully. So, it's not easy and it's complicated. And as the parent of two students, I see it working. I see where the kids can make it not work sometimes, but I also recognize that we're doing our best to engage them. So it's not easy on anybody. So thank you to the staff and to our families for working with us. I did want to take a moment to push a couple of political things out there, which is, this is it. This is your last 8 days to finish taking your census. If you have not, this is it. And if you know somebody who hasn't, gone out and taken the census, please say something to them, say something to your community. The other thing I wanted to mention, of course, is today, I think today was voter registration day. That's a large part of, and by that, it's just a national recognition that voter registration is important. We still have a little bit of time here in Ohio, and probably a couple of my colleagues can comment more accurately than I can on that. But I would just wanted to acknowledge that, things like what we just talked about, which is fighting for dollars to be allocated to our district properly, can't happen if we don't vote. And finally, there is the Senate Bill 358 out there. I know that Senator Fetter has, I think, co-sponsored with Manning, and I think that's exciting. It has to do with scaling back some testing this year. I've heard it's been tough to try to administer any sort of remote testing, and I don't really want us to spend what I anticipate will be 2 days a week still with our students in person doing testing in the spring. It's a waste of our time. So, let's pay attention to that bill and support what we can. And also we are meeting and getting back into the report card committee that Mr. Henderly and I have been a part of later this week. So there will be more action. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to call on Sheena Barnes next if she has any comments.
Thank you, President Vasquez. I'm hearing the feedback. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay. First, I want to say that I attended the memorial service of Mr. Greer on Sunday, and to see the overwhelming love that he inspired in the community, especially for our youth. A lot of youth came through, and unfortunately on Monday for his funeral, no TPS administration was present to speak to the kids that needed it. So with that, I have been asked by the community, what can we do to make sure that we're honoring our babies, our TPS family, period. And with that, I would like to present an opportunity for the FACE committee and the policy committee to join together to establish a condolencing policy. And with that policy, any TPS member, staff, or student that is taken from us, that we honor them with a plaque in their location. For students, it'll be in their schools. For staff, it'll be in their school or the building they serve with us in. And also, I would like to make sure we give a card to each and every family on the behalf of the administration and the board in togetherness. We at this time is really a lot of things going on tragically where our babies getting taken from us, regardless of how they're getting taken from us. And I would like to definitely increase our social workers, and not just for class structure, but our babies need it. We had a lot of kids that were so distraught by his loss that I was afraid they was going to pass out. And at that time, I think it would have been very helpful to have someone present to talk them through their grief. So definitely want to work on that condolences policy as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Polly Taylor Gherkin, comments?
Yes, I want to just mention the need to make sure that all of these wonderful things that we are doing to wrap services around our students during this pandemic, and the virtual learning and the hybrid learning, the work that that Mr. Murphy's team is doing with the community collaboratives is just brilliant. And I would like to make sure we're exploring sustainability options on that. I think when we first started down this path, we learned a lot about what's not great about our very structured way, our very structured, narrow way of serving students sometimes. And these are opportunities, right? To say, oh my gosh, all this stuff we're doing now, we probably would do well to keep doing it, right? Or to really reinvent the way we think about wrapping services around, and in our community collaboratives, I think are going to be a really good example. I'm afraid by the time we get them all up and running and they all get their little pandemic licenses and all of the work we're going to put into them, we're going to be, well into yellow and starting to think about going back to normal. And I don't want our back to normal not to include the all of that good work that we're putting in now. So I would like to really just encourage everybody to continue to work on the collaboration. I mean on the sustainability. Sorry about that. There's one phone in my house that still rings on the sustainability of that. And then, Dr. Durant mentioned our health director having, become the expert on all things needed to manage this pandemic. And as we know, the guidelines, the CDC guidelines are changing regularly, even to the point of being discredited at times, including the most recent set of guidelines that said you didn't need to be tested if you were exposed. So I really think we need to make a really quick reassessment of all of those pieces that many experts believe will help us keep this pandemic under control. And so make sure we're revisiting these things as often as possible. At the risk of being insensitive, I want to put a small warning on the request of my colleague, Ms. Barnes. A number of years ago, we did have this discussion in policy about how to handle the loss of our families and our of students and staff. I would caution you to put, and this will be back to Mr. Murphy, I'm sure. I would caution you to put a lot of research into best practices, including those various white papers that have been written by mental health professionals in school social work associations on this topic. Intuitively, it sounds like we should be able to do those things over and over each time someone passes, but in practice, it turns into something that we have to be very, very careful and sensitive about, and that lots of students die during the school year that we may not even really know about or know about their circumstances. And some students die under more abrupt and tragic circumstances. Every loss is tragic, but when we get into the business of choosing and prioritizing and deciding which ones should have what sort of recognition, then that usually gets us into some pretty significant uncomfortable situations. So if I remember some of that research early on that we did on that topic, is there are some protocols and some recommendations from mental health professionals and education organizations for how to very delicately handle that situation. And it's difficult, and it's especially difficult to talk about at a time when we've had one tragedy after another, and we're just feeling these losses so hard right now. But I really I do want the conversation to happen again in policy, and I do want our policy to become a little more clear. But I want some real research and some time to step back and think about it from many different points of view. It's just not as easy as it sounds, I guess, is what I'm getting at. And I know that it's not a great time to hear that. And it feels pretty insensitive of me to even have to talk about these cautions. But we have been through this over the years. And we're a very large district. So, we need to consider more than what our heart is telling us at any given moment on this topic. But I welcome those discussions.
Yeah, I think what you're speaking of is the emotional triggers about kids that attempt suicide. And I have read research on that as well. But I think at least we could do is give these families cards. I know we did it for staff members. But to hear family members talk about their losses and ask for TPS, be a part of their family, where are we at, was very difficult for me to hear, because I believe as a board member, we should be with their family, with their friends, with the students, with the teachers. And I'm not just talking about Mr. Greer's tragedy. I'm talking about every baby that we lost this year alone. And then to my recollection, that's been 8. And 8 is too many. But let's start with a card, and then we can talk about in policy regarding the plaque or something for our schools.
I'd like to call on Chris Farwick for her comments.
Thank you. You know what? I'm not going to, we can have this discussion about the condolences in family and community engagement as well as policy. We can certainly address that. We have addressed it in the past. And I'm certainly always looking, at improving what we do. But I definitely think that is the appropriate place to handle that, is through committee structure. So we'll definitely take that up. I would also like to take a moment, and I know Ms. Eichenberg spoke of it, was House Bill 358. I would like to thank Communications Department for assisting me with providing some testimony for to advance the cause. I would say we certainly want to put a freeze on report cards, any kind of new state takeovers during this pandemic would be completely out of any kind of appropriate action, and certainly any kind of ed choice district designation from it, again, completely inappropriate. So I'm hopeful that this bill would get passed. I applaud Senator Feder and Mr. Manning on pushing this bill forward. I applaud their efforts, and I certainly hope it does pass. If anyone is interested in, assisting with this, by all means, please call your senators and your representatives and let them know your feelings on it. And then I would just like to say thank you to our staff and our families during this remote phase. Thanks for your patience and your perseverance. It is not easy what we as a district are doing and we as families are doing. But thank you for hanging in there. And let's hope that this March to Yellow truly happens and we are moving in the right direction. I have a lot of concerns when it comes to our March to Yellow, just because of the safety of our students and our staff. But I have hopefully I've not given up my faith in humanity yet. And wear a mask, wear a mask, wear a mask. Whether you're staff, whether you're student, whether you're, please wear a mask. It does help save lives. And so that is, I really just want to applaud everyone's efforts, and let's hope for a positive outcome with this March to Yellow. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I guess I'm the last one to give my comments. And I just want to say a couple of things. One is that I want to acknowledge Polly Taylor Gherkin's comments about that we have visited some of these issues in the past. And I know that Ms. Gherkin is feeling that it's insensitive at this time. And so what we will do is we will discuss it in committee, because I think it does warrant a very thorough discussion all around. But I do want to acknowledge to Mrs. Gherkin, because I was there when those discussions took place. So and at this particular time, I think it's difficult to have those kinds of discussions. But Ms. Gherkin, you are correct. We have dealt with some of these things before. I think the other thing is that I also want to say, let's follow the guidelines. Again, every board member said it, wear a mask, wash your hands. And I want to make a plea to our community, our parents of our students, to encourage and to teach and educate on the front line, to get all of our students to be aware of the importance of wearing their mask and washing their hands and all of those things that are the CDC guidelines. Because the better that we do that, the more probability that we will never have to go backwards. We can always go forward. And I think that's what we all desire. I also want to thank all of our staff. We have been less than perfect. All of us have been less than perfect. And we always want to do better. But I do want to thank all of our staff. I want to thank all of my colleagues on the board. The consent agenda, and this is another past discussion that we had. When we discussed the consent agenda, we knew that the work would happen in committees. And we knew that the consent agenda would appear as if we're going through the board business quickly. And so I just want to remind everybody all of the work that the board members and our staff put into this agenda. So, and I also want to remind people that they can go and find out all of this information. All of the minutes are posted, and they can see what all the work that has been done up to this point. I also remember before the consent agenda, some board meetings going on till 8, 9, 10, and one went to 11:45, and we actually did not know how to maybe make it so that we had a board meeting that went through 2 different dates. So that's why we went to the consent agenda. So there are reasons. We put a lot of work into it. So in a minute, I'm going to ask for a motion to adjourn this meeting. But with that, I want to make everybody aware that within the next week to 2 weeks, we will again be meeting in committee meetings, and they are public. So everybody has a chance to know what the business is of the board. And so we will start up again for next month's meeting and setting the stage for all of the important issues, as some of them that were brought up here by my colleagues. So with that, I'd ask for a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Varwig.
Second, Paul Gerken.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Hearing none. Treasury, please call the roll.
Mrs. Gerken,
Yes.
Mrs. Barwig,
Yes.
Mr. Vasquez,
Yes.
Ms. Barnes,
Yes.
Mrs. Eichenberg.
Yes.
Thank you, everybody. Meeting's adjourned.